Hey, team. Welcome back to another episode of the Jenn Commandments podcast. I am your host, Jenn Wien. I'm an engineer currently working in Wisconsin. I grew up in the Chicagoland area and I went to college in Michigan. Hey, y'all, I'm tired today. I know I probably start every podcast like that, but I'm fucking exhausted. What to do? How are you? Um, yeah, man. I have my notes about Iran. I watched a YouTube video and tried to take very diligent notes, and I only made it about halfway through the 25-minute YouTube video, and I have 6 pages worth of notes. So they're not complete. But so before World War II, okay, let me just bring it out. So okay, I guess I do we start by just getting into it. I don't know. My week was good, I guess. I was really not fucking with work this week. I need to probably work a little bit tonight before the work week tomorrow just to like get my shit together a little bit. I've just been having the hardest time finding the motivation to like exist this last week. I like work. My first week back from work after vacation was really hectic, and I think this week I just like finally crashed, so that sucks. We're hoping to get them next week. But yeah, I'm just tired, man. I took myself on a date yesterday. I went to a crab boil. Or like a seafood boil, period. I've been seeing all of them on like how Red Lobster rebranded, and then now they're doing seafood boils. Um, and I've been seeing that, and I'm like, ugh. So I went to a local place um, here in Wisconsin and went. It was very delicious. Very happy with it. Um, yeah, I had a lot of fun. I love taking myself on dates. I think it is a good reminder of nobody is going to take care of me the way that I take care of me. And like that's the way it should be. So, yeah, I don't know. Take care of yourself, and then you'll start expecting other people to take care of you as well. Because like if you already take such good care of yourself, like your barrier to entry, um, for people in your life is going to be a little bit higher. So I don't know. I think it's good. It's healthy. But I have been. It's really heavy to watch this shit. Like obviously that's why I'm doing the research, and it's very important to do this research. But like when you just really start to understand, like to the extent that the US like doesn't give a fuck about human life so long as it like keeps its um alliances, it's a little disappointing, to say the least. So we'll start to go through it here. Yeah. So okay. So before World War II, oil was discovered in Iran by Britain. So Iran has the fourth largest oil reserve in the world. Um, and so they are a very big exporter of oil. They are an energy superpower in the world. And when the British found this oil deposit or what reserve or whatever, um, Iran was not a part of the British colonial reign at this time. But at this time, the British colonial reign was in charge of like a fourth of the world, right? So just keep that in mind, right? So we're at before World War II right now. Oil was found in Iran by the British, but the British were like, "Fuck," but they're not ours. But we clearly want this oil, right? So the British were like, "Hey, let's set up a deal where you only get 16% of the profits and we get the rest from your guys' oil reserve." Okay, so that happened, and this became so successful for the British that it became the largest company in the British colonial empire. And it used so this company was called the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company. And at some point, this company becomes so big that it is fully in charge of all of the oil reserves in Iran. Okay, so keep that in mind. So um, they're like, hey, not only am I going to basically just like take your oil, I'm only going to give you 16%. Okay, that is the deal. And because like Iran is small, and they had no real like militaristic force, like they were just like, okay, like it wasn't really like a deal. It was just like they told them, and yeah. Um, and so Iranians were like, hey, that's not fair around the time that World War II started. So obviously, like this was something that had been an issue, but it didn't really come to a head until World War II started. And Iran was suspiciously close to Nazi Germany during this time as well. So, because of this, Iran was invaded by both the British and the Soviet Union because they wanted to make sure that Iran wasn't like conspiring with Nazi Germany. So, like, yeah. I don't really know if I'm smart enough to be talking about this. That's why I'm like super uncomfortable right now. But um, like I said, not all of the research is done. So like maybe we'll talk about like the stuff that I have already, and then maybe next week I can give you like from where we left off to present, like just so that like because this is so heavy and like information deep, maybe like after this we'll do like a palate cleanser and I'll tell you some gossip or whatever, um and like we can do it for 2 weeks in a row or something, I don't know. But it's just something that's like important to talk about, and like not a lot of people have like the full context of why. So the British and the Soviet Union were like, hey, we want to make sure that we keep our oil, one, and then we also want to make sure that the people who supply our oil are not conspiring against us, with the Nazis, right? So Iran tried to stop the invasion, but their technology was much behind and they were much smaller. So the Allies, which is like the US, British, and Soviet Union, occupied Iran for all of World War II. So, like, we were just like in Iran. Uh, like, and I don't know what that looks like on a day to day basis. I didn't do like a ton of research on like what having a military presence of another country looks like. So during this time, the Allies stripped Iran of their leader. So basically, the Allies came in and they were like, this is no longer your leader. And instead, your younger son is going to be our leader, because the Allies had decided that the younger son was more impressionable and would have like they would stay in line basically with whatever the US, British, and Soviet Union wanted. Okay. So during this time period, Iran saw 30,000 Americans in their homeland during this time. And then also, a third of all the supplies that America provided to World War II were sent through Iran first, or like it was on Iran's grounds before they made it into tactical or whatever. I don't fucking know how weapons work, right? So after World War II ended, then the Allies left, right? Allies. In the 1950s, the agreement between Britain and Iran still sucked, and Britain was withholding financial records from Iran. So, like, not only were they only paying them 16%, but they were lying about, and they like refused to show financial records to Iran on what that money was. So they were like likely very much underpaying Iran, even on top of the shitty deal that they already had. Okay. Um, Iran wanted to nationalize the oil company, and they successfully did this in 1951 with unanimous approval by their government. So in 1951, they were like, hey, bitch, we don't want this to be ran by like Britain anymore. We want this to be like a federal, this is our oil, and therefore we think it should be like federally owned, like the post office here. Right. And so that way, like, maybe oil prices in Iran would be more stable, blah, 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 blah. Right. And then immediately, Britain responds to this by embargoing all oil, okay, coming from Iran. So, what does that mean? What does an embargo mean, class? So Google says that an embargo is a restriction or prohibition on trade, travel, or other commercial activity with a specific country or region. My apologies. So they was like, fuck you, basically, right? Then 2 years later, in 1953, Britain's Section 6 and America's CIA set up a ploy to overthrow the Iranian government. Okay. This is facts. Okay. This is like, I don't know. Maybe it was in a YouTube video, so I don't know for real if it's facts, but like, I assume that they fucking studied, right? So let me look. So yep, this comes up. Worked together to orchestrate a coup that overthrew the democratically elected government of the Iranian prime minister. They did this due to concerns of homeboys, whatever their leader's name at the time, plan to nationalize Iran's oil fields, which posed a threat to British and U.S. oil interests in the region. So, like, yeah, it's rough. Has been acknowledged by the U.S. government and is seen as a significant event with lasting impacts on the relationship between Iran and the United States. They're like, we think this could impact the relationship. Like, no shit, stupid. Goofy. Oh, NPR from August 19th, 2013. How the CIA overthrew Iran's democracy in 4 days. On August 19th, 2013, the CIA publicly admitted for the first time its involvement in the 1953 coup against Iran's elected prime minister, Mohammad Mossadegh. The documents provided details of the CIA's plan at the time, which was led by senior officer Kermit Roosevelt Jr., the grandson of U.S. President Theodore Roosevelt. Over the course of 4 days in August 1953, Roosevelt would orchestrate not one, but two attempts to destabilize the government of Iran, forever changing the relationship between the country and the U.S. In this episode, okay, whatever. It's a 36-minute listen if you ever want to go listen to it. So this leader was a beloved figure in Iran. During his tenure, he introduced a range of social and economic policies, the most significant being the nationalization of the Iranian oil industry. Great Britain had controlled Iran's oil for decades through the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company. After months of talks, the prime minister broke off negotiations and denied the British any further involvement in Iran's oil industry. Britain then appealed to the United States for help, which eventually led to the CIA orchestrating the overthrow of Mossadegh and restore of Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, the last Shah of Iran, which Mohammad Pahlavi, I believe, let me look, was the leader that the British and the US were like, that's our dude. So like basically Britain and the US were like, this is not this leader that y'all like, fuck him. We're gonna bring in the guy that we like. And y'all can't do shit about it because y'all are tiny. So fuck y'all. Like, that's dead ass what happened. Okay. According to Stephen Kinzer, author of the book All the Shah's Men, Roosevelt quickly seized control of the Iranian press by buying them off with bribes and circulating anti-Mossadegh propaganda. He recruited allies among the Islamic clergy and convinced the Shah that Mossadegh was a threat. I probably am pronouncing this hella wrong. Very sorry. The last step entailed a dramatic attempt to apprehend Mossadegh at his house in the middle of the night, but the coup failed. Mossadegh learned of it and fought back. The next morning, he announced victory over the radio. Mossadegh thought he was in the clear, but Roosevelt hadn't given up. He orchestrated a second coup, which succeeded. Mossadegh was placed on trial and spent his life under house arrest. The Shah returned to power and ruled another 25 years until 1979, until the 1979 Iranian Revolution. The 1953 coup was later invoked by students and the political class in Iran as a justification for overthrowing the Shah. Y'all are listening to me struggle through this shit. I'm so sorry, but yeah. So basically, oh, that's crazy. That's so disappointing. We were like, oh, y'all want to own your own oil? Fuck you. That's crazy. Okay. So from there, okay, in the coup that happened, 300 Iranians were killed during this like whole extravaganza, right? The Shah turns into the Shah that they liked. What was his name? Mohammad Reza Pahlavi. Him. He turns into an authoritarian leader. And according to the Iranians, they hated him. Like, he was considered a Western puppet. This is a direct result of the West coming in and basically putting their current leader on house arrest and promoted the guy that they knew that was for their team, basically. So that's that. And then my next note is that the Iranians hated him. And then next, after all this happens, America wants to be allies with Iran during the Cold War. And then I said, don't panic. I'm not sure how much we have to discuss the Cold War today. History freaks me out. Like, I've historically been somebody who does not like history, and I'm realizing that all the things that I'm interested in, like politics and like community aid, I need to be locked into this so that I know the history. Okay. So I don't think we have to talk about the Cold War any else other than like that we wanted to be allies with Iran. And then over the years, the Shah, what's his face? Mohammed Pahlavi, his pro-American policies made him very disliked throughout the like Iranian people. He responds by hiring police to arrest his opponents. So he's like, "Oh, you fuckers don't like me. Let's bring in the peacekeepers." Okay? Like on some Hunger Game shit for real. Let's bring in the peacekeepers. Torture and prison to political opponents was reported, and like the Shah is directly responsible for that. So like if he had a political opponent, say like Trump, it would be like Trump hiring somebody to torture Kamala during the election. Okay. Um, so he also then outlawed the Iranian Communist Party. So like, and the party that he didn't fuck with, he was like, "Fuck all y'all. That's if you're a part of that shit, it's illegal." You know, like that's sort of his whole tea. Okay. So then, in the late 1970s, everyone is sick of the Shah, and then we're getting to the brink of revolution at this point, like because there's only so much that you can be under this very authoritarian, especially like an authoritarian force that like wasn't elected. Like they don't want him there. They were happy with their leader, and he was like stripped from them, you know. So like of course revolution was bound to happen. So in the late 70s, a movie theater was set on fire. Iranians believe it was the Shah's secret police that set this movie theater on fire, and 420 people were killed. Immediately, protests happened, and Shah's police opened fire on them. Opened fire on them. Opened fired on them. Opened fire. I don't know. They were shooting at them, and they also like quite literally set them on fire. Like was throwing fires into crowds. Okay. 5 million people protested, and the Shah realizes he's fighting a losing battle and flees the country in 1979. Guess where that motherfucker flees? Take a fucking wild guess. That homeboy took a flight to Florida, probably. He said, I'm gonna go relax. Okay. New policies. So, okay. The Shah leaves, and then immediately Iran's like, damn, what do we do now? They elect a new leader, and their new policies are basically just anti-USA and anti-Israel. Like, they hate the Western world. They don't really give a fuck about anything other than the fact that they're anti-us. Okay. And like, right, in theory, rightfully so. Right. I will make the argument that like two wrongs don't make a right, but I also am not here to like deny people their reactions to the trauma that they've faced at the hands of the Western world. So if all you've been hearing your whole life is how the United States, Britain, the Soviet Union, Israel, like anyone that you associate with the Western world is terrible, whatever, like, of course this is going to be the result. And like, literally, we like did a coup to them. So like, you know what I mean? So okay. This is where things are a little interesting, right? So the Iranian Revolution came as a huge, huge, huge surprise to the rest of the world. No one else in the world, maybe outside of Iran, knew just how much content and like, or not contempt, contempt, I think. Let me look up the word now. Now I'm contempt, trying to use words I don't actually know. The feeling that a person or thing is beneath consideration, worthless, or deserving scorn. Okay. So, no one else in the world, because we don't have, at the time, that you have to remember, this is the late 70s. Okay. There's no internet. There's no, all of the news that about Iran that the United States is getting is from their fucking Western puppet leader. Okay. So, of course, their Western puppet leader is going to be like, I have everything under control. Everyone in Iran loves the US. He was feeding, like, there's a lot of room for miscommunication when you're getting your information from one source and he's like a dipshit, right? Like, and like, that's no tea, no shade, but like, this brings up a very interesting point about how technology and, like, in my opinion, social media, things like TikTok are a necessary evil, because I know that like that those things didn't exist back then, and so therefore like this is null and void as it relates to technology. But I think part of the reason why people want to like make it so that social media is like a very restricted thing is because they know that this is a mode of communication for the world. We are in a place right now where we have been allowed to communicate with people in a way that we've never been allowed to communicate with them. And then that allows us to have like an unfiltered view of what it looks like in Gaza right now, and an unfiltered view of like what the protests in LA looked like. Otherwise, we would just be hearing that from news sources. And news sources feed us propaganda every single day. Okay? So there's no way of knowing what we're being fed is the truth unless it comes from somebody directly that's in that space, right? So in theory, this to the United States, Iran suddenly hating the United States might be crazy and new, but Iran has hated us for years. Years. For our doing, bro. Like it's our fault. Okay? So, US was like, "Damn, that's crazy. My side bitch blocked me overnight over something seemingly minor." Right? Because they didn't have the full context. Okay? I talked about all that already. What's next? Okay. Next. Back to the story, right? I talked about technology a lot in my notes. So when the Shah fled Iran, he went for cancer treatment in the United States. Sort of an asshole move. I put in parentheses. I said I understand, but it does seem petty. To be fair, like I'm sure like the cancer treatment was necessary or whatever. But also he was gonna have that cancer treatment no matter what. So like he was rich. He's a world leader. Like as a retaliation, the new leader of Iran is like, fuck you, old Shah. We need you to come back here ASAP to pay for all your old crimes against the citizens of Iran during your reign as basically a dictator. So like they find out that homeboy is in the US and they're like, fuck you, come back and pay for your war crimes, bitch. Because the US knew that if he went back, and a more likely answer, they wanted to send a big fuck you to the new Iranian government leadership that hates them. Basically, the US, when they heard that they want the Shah back, they were like, no. Okay. However, we could see how this would make the Iranian government nervous, right? Because the US has aided in basically overthrowing their government. Well, not basically. They have aided in overthrowing their government before. And put in this weirdo who they know will do whatever they want. So they like the tea is like Iran was like, you've worked with him before, and what's stopping you guys from just coming back in and overthrowing our shit again? Fuck you, bring him back. Okay. In response to the US not giving their bitch back and the US likely planning a third coup on the Iranian government, thousands of Iranians stormed the U.S. embassy and took 52 hostages from the U.S. embassy in Iran. They said, which is crazy. Like, I understand why they did it. But also, then obviously the U.S. is going to have to do, like, the whole tea is, in my opinion, the British and I guess the US could be involved, but the British and Iran should have figured out a way to come up with a more even deal, or like the British could have simply been like, I understand that you want to own your own oil. Is there another deal that we can strike up? Like just figuring out a way to like, I don't know. It didn't have to be like this, As a result, after they take the hostages, the Shah goes to Egypt. And then the Carter administration works for months to try to work up a deal to safely get the hostages back. Like they're trying to strike up like bargains and that sort of thing. So then that to no avail, basically. They're like, Iran's like, fuck you, Then in 1980, in April, the U.S. Army Rangers raid to try to get them. And this ends in disaster. Okay. There's a helicopter crash. 8 soldiers lost their lives. And then Carter like immediately abandons the mission. And like we did not even make contact with Iran. Like that crash, that helicopter crash happened on the way to wherever they were going. Like they did not even make contact with Iranians during this time. So then after their failed mission, which is not the Iranians' fault, by the way, after their failed mission, the U.S. cuts all diplomatic ties with the new Iranian regime. They're like, fuck you, we're not allies anymore. Okay. And like they never really were allies. They literally were like dictating Iran, like what do you mean diplomatic ties? Like, you were being overbearing, you know? But that's neither here nor there. Then, in September of 1980, Iraq invades or no, sorry. Iraq tries to invade and take control of the Persian Gulf oil deposits. So they're like Iraq. So during this time period, Iraq has like some oil deposits on the Gulf, but they wanted to take control of all of the oil deposits in the Persian Gulf. And so they thought this was a perfect time, since they're distracted with like the United States stuff, to invade. However, Iran has a way bigger military, so not much happened. And then, like, even though the U.S. was like, we're cutting diplomatic ties, the U.S. and Israel are both have like bases, military bases there. Um, Once the leader of Iraq knows that all ties are cut with the U.S. and in turn Israel, he was like, let's get them bitches. So then um Iraq thinks it's going to be an easy victory because like Iran has a lot of shit going on, you know, like they have shit going on with Israel, they have shit going on with the US, they have shit going on with Britain. um and Iraq's like, easy dub, like we can take Iran now. But this turns into an 8-year stalemate, similar to World War One, from what the YouTube video said. However, when all that Iraq shit was going down, Iran was like, okay, maybe we shouldn't put our eggs in too many baskets at once, and let's release the hostages back to the US. So Iran does finally release those hostages back, but that was after 444 days, just as a note. And 400,000 Iranians died as a result of the war between Iran and Iraq. And the U.S. supplied many of the weapons used to kill those Iranians. So, yeah. Yeah, so like once, from my understanding, once the U.S. cut ties with Iran, they then like helped supply the weapons to Iraq in the war. So like the US is always supplying weapons, babe. That's one of our strong suits. Okay? So that's all the notes I have for today. We're at the point where we're at the war between Iraq and Iran. And we'll talk about from there how we got to today next week. I think that's a good stopping point for now. But that's sort of what's going on in Iran, how we got to be enemies or whatever. Personally, I don't want to see anyone hurt anywhere ever. I'm anti-killing people. I'm anti-war. Yeah, I think the U.S. loves getting themselves into other people's business, which is crazy because we're like the little siblings of the world, you know, like in relation to other empires, the US is like very young. And so like, I don't know, it's just like it's a lot, you know. And I want to talk about it. I know that I'm not like, you know, the most educated person to be talking about it, but um somebody should be. And I don't know, this is crazy shit. This is crazy shit that I would have never known had I not done this research, you know? So I don't know. If you don't know about some shit, maybe go, you know, study it, because I don't do that very often. Maybe it's something I'm working on doing more, but having like a very American perspective about everything will really lead you in some sad places, you know? Like, even being in Malaysia, like, I clearly don't know anything about anyone other than myself. And like that's just so, it's so apparent when you leave the country just how little you know about the world, because the US is seen as like this mecca of like pop culture, not culture, but like pop culture, which is weird, like Hollywood and like that sort of thing. But like, man, there's so much world out there, and like we've really done a number on much of the world, for like no other reason other than like getting what we want and like being the bullies. Like there's no diplomacy as it relates to the United States. We are simply like brute force always, and that's just so exhausting in my opinion. Um and it makes somebody like Trump like excellent for what the United States has always like been, is like just sort of like the ghetto of the world. And like I hate the word ghetto. We've talked about that a million, but like I mean it as derogatory as I fucking have talked about it. Okay? Like we are the fucking ghetto of the world. And so learning that, the quicker you learn that, the quicker you like come to terms with that, the easier it will be to like lean into the truth of what the United States has done to the world, you know? So, I guess that's it. We could do a palate cleanser. So, my week was pretty good. I've been, y'all know, I've been like open finally to like intimacy in various ways. I've been like unpacking still. It's been, obviously we started talking about family and community a lot last week, and that's been on my mind a lot. Me does a palate cleanser and then still talks about heavy shit. um but I've really been like trying to figure out what family means to me and like what I want, an ideal partner, or like we've talked about, like what does an ideal family dynamic look like for me? What do I expect from my family members? And I don't just mean like creating my own family someday. I mean like family members that I already have technically. Like I talk a lot of shit like I don't have a family, and like likely or not likely, um largely me not having a family is my own doing. Like I choose not to talk to many of my family members. And in theory, I would like to have some sort of relationship with them someday, but I still don't know what that looks like for me. And in a way where like I'm not going to disrespect myself by allowing them back in my circle. And so I'm starting to finally think about what that looks like instead of just like holding on to the anger and whatever other feelings that have historically made me feel safe when people hurt me. And just being like, okay, the hurt is there. Um, and like, that's okay. How do I move forward now? So I've been toying with that a little bit of what that looks like. And then once I have some sort of idea of what like an ideal family dynamic, what that looks like for me, I'll have more bandwidth to be able to communicate that to them, and then also be able to communicate with like potential suitors, um, what I'm looking for in my day-to-day life, because we all battle with like loneliness or whatever, but like I find myself that even when I am in the presence of somebody, I'm very overwhelmed the whole time. And like, so what do I need from somebody to not be overwhelmed but still not feel that loneliness or whatever, I guess. So I don't know. I'm really starting to like get into that too. I don't know. I've been feeling really good lately. I don't know. I'm going to try to give up smoking. If I come onto this podcast high next week, please don't yell at me. But I didn't smoke obviously while I was in Malaysia. And that was really good for me, and I had some like stuff that was still here when I got back, but I want to take some time. I had a really bad relationship with alcohol for a while, and I like cut it out for I think like 8 months or something. Like I really took a break for real. And now I have like a fine relationship with it. So I'm hoping that that sort of follows suit with smoking. So we'll see. But I just wanted to update you. I know it's sort of a heavy episode, but I it's important to talk about. I think. So I hope you learned something, and I hope I didn't fumble too bad. But I think it's pretty. Yeah, it's a lot. So that's all. I hope you guys have an excellent week. Yeah, I have a lot of interviews and stuff to like prep for, so I'm feeling the stress, but nothing but good stress. So that's all. Love you guys very much. I will talk to you next week. Let me know if you have anything that you think I should follow up on as it relates to like this part of the history. But we'll get back into it next week too. So love you. Bye.